Hi, I'm Professor Adrian Saville. This is The Doctor is on the Money. In this series, we're exploring the critical ingredients that translate into country prosperity. And in the first 3 episodes, we've spoken about savings and investment, country connectedness, and the precondition to those two, which is policies and institutions. In this 4th factor, we look at demography, why babies matter to country prosperity. Babies matter because babies are the source of supply. What I mean by that is eventually babies become your workforce. Ultimately, babies become your workforce. So babies born today, they go through a functional healthcare system, they go through an effective education system, and in 20 years' time, they join your workforce and become the source of production. And then are productively engaged for the next 40 years or so. And that's the way a functional economy operates. Of course, there are those preconditions then that it's necessary that you have education and healthcare, and we'll come back to those. That's the Saville six-pack work in progress. Ingredients 5 and 6, education and healthcare. We'll take those as given for now. And babies are going to immediately require support and infrastructure in the form of hospitals to be born in, nappies to wear, then creches, junior school, and into high school. If it was as simple as having babies, our work here could be done. Go home and have babies, and you've got that critical ingredient. As I've already suggested, it's not that simple, that there is a precondition that babies need to be born into environments where healthcare and education coexist and look after the growth, development, building of people's capacity and capability as they grow from babies to adults. And on that score, we know, for instance, from early childhood development that some of the most powerful investments that you can make are in the first 1,000 days of a person's life. If you get those 1,000 days right, you set a person on an almost permanently positive trajectory. The elegance of those first 1,000 days, and we'll talk about this in the 5th pack, education, is that those investments in early childhood development are actually very modest. They don't require substantial amounts of money or capital. It's a double-edged sword in that if you get this wrong, you have built a population time bomb ripe for explosion. Not having babies actually becomes a headwind. There's 2 really standout examples of this. The first is countries that have become very rich, ultra affluent. Japan is the standout example. Europe has followed in quickly behind Japan, where there are fewer babies born. And just to get a population to sustain itself, you need 2.2 babies per adult woman. And then a population is in the business of sustaining itself. Both of these examples, Japan and Europe, are now well below sustainable population rates. Japan is the fastest shrinking society in the world. However, there are some countries that have stopped having babies before they have become affluent. And the textbook example of this is China, where China is the first and so far only economy to go into population decline before they have become financially prosperous. And that is the result of China's one-child policy that was born in the 1970s. Buying into the policy prescription, the policy narrative of the 1970s, which was don't have babies if you want to become prosperous, China pursued the one-child policy. And what it means is that if Chinese couples stopped having babies in the 1970s, the population today is shrinking. And that is exactly then where we find China's circumstance with a shrinking workforce. So China is the first country that goes into shrinking population because of this one-child policy. There are perversions to this in that not only does China have fewer people coming into the workforce now than going into retirement, but there are also demographic distortions. So in China, there is a culture that favors boys over girls. And the result is that China has today in their demography 50 million more boys than girls based on a actuarial distribution, or what you would anticipate from an actuarial distribution of the demographic pyramid. This then points to places that might be sitting on incredible demographic potential and prospect. And of course, the standout place is Africa. Billion population, the youngest population in the world, most people sub 25 years old, and still growing at a healthy clip. So the key ingredient then is not just do we have babies, but do these babies have access to education and healthcare? And the evidence that we get coming from many African countries, always keeping in mind that Africa is not one country, Africa is not a place, but the evidence that we have from many African countries is steady improving access to healthcare, rising education outputs, and this young, vibrant, potentially very productive workforce soon becoming available. This demographic base then, this young African population, sets the continent up to be a very productive base of the future, with the precondition that it is necessary that there is access to improved education and healthcare. Of course, if we get that wrong, if the continent gets that wrong, that's a trap, that is a minefield, and this demographic potential could become a demographic disaster. Why would aging populations be a curse? Well, Japan is our go-to example, and my industry colleague, friend, associate, Glenn Silverman, gives this lovely throwaway example where he points out that this year Japan will sell more adult diapers than infant diapers. So there's a business prospect in that. But what it really means is that as people head into retirement, the productive base, the productive engine of your economy, young people coming into the workforce, is starting to idle and then steadily slowing and eventually stalling. I'm Professor Adrian Saville. In our fourth ingredient of the Saville six-pack, we've spoken about demography, why babies matter. To make babies matter most, we need two other critical ingredients in the Saville six-pack, education and healthcare. And we go to those key ingredients in the next two episodes.